Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Face to face with Vladimir Putin, the Secretary of State, saying today that is exactly what the Commander-in-Chief wants on Friday. So what's that like? A former KGB agent is with us tonight here on The Hill. Also tonight, suing the chair of the Federal Reserve, how that's the latest threat from President Trump. There is also, by the way, a new high on Wall Street. Plus, you could say taunting Trump. How Gavin Newsom is escalating his feud in all caps. What Newsom is telling The Hill tonight in an exclusive interview about his plans. But first tonight, here from The Hill, red, white, and blue, and the National Guard. Our cameras catching the National Guard today positioning across the nation's capital. Just hours after the president called in the Guard to take on crime. The White House today defending that move.
The president wants to see all of our nation's cities be safe, but I think starting with our nation's capital is a great place to begin, and it should serve as a model for the rest of the country.
So lots of talk, lots of discussion about this today and really over the last 24 hours or so, right? Here's how we break some of it down tonight here on The Hill. These are the numbers for violent crime in D.C. over the past year. Murders, sex abuse cases, assaults with a deadly weapon, robberies. The good news there, look at those arrows, all down, right? That's what you want to see, of course. But when you zoom out, a different picture emerges. This is murders, okay, here in Washington, D.C. And you look at the trend when it goes back to 2018, up, straight line, and then down. Vehicle thefts, basically a similar picture for the last 7-8 years or so. It goes up and then ticks back down over the past year. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro, weighing in on these numbers today.
I don't need any more statistics. All I need are people to recognize that these were vibrant human beings cut down because of illegal guns. I guarantee you that every one of these shootings was with an illegal gun.
But you heard the White House say today this could also serve as a warning to other cities, meaning bringing in the National Guard. In Chicago, which was name-checked by the president last week, or earlier this week, rather, pushback today from the mayor there.
He is one of the biggest threats to humanity that we've seen in an entire generation. And as mayor of the city of Chicago, and as someone who understands the premise of our Constitution, we are justified in our resistance to his authoritarianism.
So what are we seeing tonight? Here, as this rollout begins, for now in our nation's capital, our Joe Khalil, just down the road here in Washington with what he is seeing there. Joe?
Yeah, Blake, we're just starting to really see the effects of this surge. We heard Caroline Levitt today talk about 23 arrests that were made overnight that she attributes to the federal surge and the federalization here of the D.C. Metro Police Department. We saw the mayor, Muriel Bowser, meeting with the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. They both said it was a productive meeting. And Bowser came out and said, actually, the enforcements from the top might help fill the gaps in the D.C. Metro Police local in places where they need more officers, more personnel. So there's a level of collaboration there that maybe we didn't expect between D.C. and the Trump administration. And the other element of this, Blake, is the homeless situation. And you see these encampments behind us here. We got some insight from the press secretary about how the federalization plan aims to address and clean up the homeless encampment situation. This is what Caroline Levitt said today.
Homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time.
Now, Blake, offering that kind of ultimatum may not be as simple as it appears. We've talked to several homeless people today. A lot of them who live in these tents say they don't want to go into shelter. Some feel unsafe there. We talked to homeless advocates who told us in D.C. there are anywhere from 40 to 60 available beds right now per night, and there are about 900 to 1,000 homeless people sleeping on the streets. The math doesn't add up there either.
All right, our Joe K live tonight on the streets of Washington, D.C. Joe, thank you. In the wake of the president's decision to federalize Washington, D.C.'s police force, federal agents now being deployed in the district. Customs and Border Protection among those agencies, for example, on the ground. The White House also responding to how the administration plans to conduct immigration operations here in our nation's capital.
If law enforcement officers encounter a criminal in this city and they are an illegal alien, of course the appropriate measures to detain and deport that individual will be taken.
With us now, here on the Hill, Senior Advisor to Customs and Border Protection, former Chief of the U.S. Border Patrol as well, Ron Vitello, with us here in studio. Ron, nice to see you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for inviting me.
50, give or take, CBP officers as part of this effort. What is the expectation as you know it on your end?
Make the streets safe again, right? So there's going to be a National Guard deployment. I think they can do perimeter control. They can protect individual sites, buildings, if you will. And then the CBP augmentation to the Metropolitan Police Department is patrolling the streets, making the streets safe, addressing crime as it occurs.
So here was Mayor Bowser. She's the mayor of Washington, D.C. earlier today. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
What I'm focused on is the federal surge, how we got here, or what we think about the circumstances. Right now, we have more police, and we want to make sure we're using them.
So we want to make sure that we use them, she says. How should they be used?
Well, I heard her earlier in this press conference say that she was 90 officers down from whatever the goal was, or some number of so filling in, patrolling. This is an operation. And as an operator, as her running the police force or commanding the police chief to do more on crime, that means you put boots on the ground. That's what is happening with the federal response and the administration of the police department.
Is this city safe, district safe as you see it?
I don't see it as safe.
Why not?
I think most American cities are suffering. You just talked about the homeless problem that we see. That deteriorates the quality of life for the people that live here, the people that have to work here, walk down the street to go to lunch, and you're confronted by people who are talking to themselves. It's a problem. And crime, as you saw in the numbers that you showed earlier, also is a problem.
So it seems like there's been a little, you heard there from the mayor, cooperation or at least acceptance of this, but I also played that quote there from Brandon Johnson, who's the mayor of Chicago, in which he said, quote, "We are justified in our resistance to his," meaning Trump's, "authoritarianism." What would you say to the mayor of Chicago if that is the next or one of the next cities potentially?
I think the mayor here, Bowser, has set the right tone for this. She's accepting the additional resources, which she says she needs, and what we all recognize is a need for more effective policing in the District of Columbia. And I think Chicago is in exactly the same place.
Do you think those cities are next? Do you think that's coming soon, however you might define soon?
The president ran on a campaign of making America great again. You can't have good commerce. You can't have good schools. You can't have safe streets without more police and more police presence.
All right. Let me leave you with this, because our Kelly Meyer was talking to Tom Homan, the border czar, on the North Lawn today. Here was Kelly's question and how Homan responded.
Any updates on any raids or deportation efforts here in D.C. while your men are out on the street here? Do you have any updates on numbers?
You're going to see more deportations come out of Washington, D.C. than you've seen in the past. I guarantee that.
Says we're going to see more. And before I had even heard that response, I was going to ask you if this was sort of a backdoor way for more deportations. And it seems like Tom Homan there is acknowledging, in a sense, that maybe it might be.
Well, there are deportation operations going on in every city in the United States. The connection now between the actual patrol function in Washington, D.C. and federal agents is closer. So you will see more arrests. You'll see more operations that make the city safer, and that will include arresting people who they find in the course of this work in the country illegally.
All right. We'll leave it there. Ron Vitello, Senior Advisor over at CBP. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. With me now, the co-host of the Hill TV's rising NewsNation contributor, Lindsay Granger, with us now full-time here in Washington. Hello. Congrats.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Excited to have you. So how do you argue against the trends? I laid some of it out there.
And I think a lot of the conversation showed down for decades, down for, over recent years, over Biden. I think when you look since 2018, like you were showing us, there's a little more of a story there. It's not to have a conversation about whether or not D.C. is the safest place in the world or not, but it's not on the top 10 most dangerous cities in the United States right now. So I understand why this might be a politically good issue for President Trump because the Doge employee just got hurt. It's something to talk about, right? We never want that to happen in any city. But to go down this rabbit hole where you're overstepping local authorities, when you know that's been a consistent in Trump's administration. He overstepped local authorities in Los Angeles recently and in California when he decided to send national troops there. We don't want to make that a consistent thing.
Didn't it end, like Trump sent in the National Guard there, it diffused. And now it's on to the next.
And others argue that it raised the temperature up. And so that's why we started seeing those car fires and everything. And obviously, I always blame the person that commits the criminal act for the issue and not the administration or the local authorities. However, I do think that when you ignite the fire and bring more of this presence here, there are going to be repercussions that usually fall on the people that are, maybe not doing the crimes. I'm likening this to like stop and frisk. When you look at New York and how many people were in the streets trying to find something, that largely failed. They didn't find any guns on people often. They didn't see anything. And a lot of people said racial profiling came out of that. So what happens here when D.C. we have a bunch of federal authorities? You know what Trump is saying when he says young kids are running around. So who are we profiling in these incidents?
You talked about the politics of this. I had a very smart Democrat who I trust tell me that some of the polling that Democrats saw after the election, the 2024 election, was Americans basically saying, if Democrats can't run their cities, why should they be entrusted to run the country? At that time being Kamala Harris, right? And you just pointed out it's smart politically, and I guess that's kind of what the president is hitting on here. If I know that polling, he certainly knows it, and I guess he's sort of hitting on that, is he not?
Yeah, but I think when you look at overall and states-wise, where the crime's happening the most, it's usually in red states. And so if we look up the top 10, or even a city like Memphis, Tennessee, okay, well then let's tell the big story there. Why doesn't Trump start there if the crime really wants to be tackled?
You don't think there's a problem in blue cities?
No, I certainly think there's problems in both, but why pick D.C. to start with? Is it because a political issue is right on the cusp and easy to target? Or is it because there's a huge, he called the state of emergency, and I just don't think it's quite there.
We'll see you later in the show.
Yes.
Now that you're here full time, don't go anywhere.
I won't.
You're on the clock. Lindsey Granger. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Still to come tonight here on The Hill. Some new numbers out today as it relates to inflation, what it means for your family. Mick Mulvaney live with me on the other side of the break. Plus, we are live in Ukraine. Is Vladimir Zelensky willing to give up some land to Russia? What he told our Robert Sherman today. And I'll talk live with a former KGB undercover agent on what Putin is thinking. Plus this.
We're not going to sit back and watch you light democracy on fire. We will fight fire with fire.
You know him, the California Governor Gavin Newsom, with a warning shot there to President Trump. His exclusive interview with The Hill coming up. I thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. See you back on the other side of the break. 4 minutes out. Clapping for good reason. Today turned into a pretty good day for your wallet, despite all those gloomy headlines that we've been seeing about the economy by some over the last few months or so. Stocks today closing at least the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ at all-time highs. There's a lot of news today behind the numbers, and it all has big implications for the economy and for the president. I want to walk you through a handful of what stood out to me today. First, a new inflation report showing inflation hit 2.7% last month, the same month as before, depending on whatever number you look at. Essentially, right now, inflation's running somewhere between 2.5% and 3%. Still there, still sticking. After today's news, investors now broadly expecting the Fed to lower interest rates in September. The odds now hovering, look at that, 95% or so for a rate cut next month. The president also once again called out the Fed Chair Jerome Powell for not lowering rates. And in the same post, threatened a potential lawsuit against the chairman of the Fed for cost overruns, he says, on the Fed's renovation project. And over at the White House, they suggested that the monthly jobs report will likely go forward. It became a question as the new nominee to run the numbers made previous comments about possibly suspending the counting.
Will the Bureau of Labor Statistics continue to put out monthly jobs reports?
Well, look, what I'll tell you about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I believe that is the plan and that's the hope, and that these monthly reports will be data that the American people can trust.
But here's another number that you might not see out there today, and it's just as important, if not more important than anything I put out there. The deficit keeps getting bigger. So far this fiscal year, there's been about $1.6 trillion added to the deficit. Through the same time frame the year prior, that number was $1.5 trillion. Translation, it's going higher. This past month, almost $300 billion tacked on alone. With me now, former White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor Mick Mulvaney. And back with us once again, the former South Carolina Democratic Congressman Joe Cunningham. This is our designated South Carolina segment, I guess. Hello, gentlemen. Thanks for being with us tonight. So, Mick, I'm going to start with you. I threw a lot out there. What stood out to you today?
The deficit numbers really bother me. I mean, to take Bill Clinton and sort of turn him on its ear, it looks to me like the era of small government is over. Keep in mind, these are bigger deficit numbers that we've seen in the past, and that's with the tariff revenues coming in and with the DOGE cuts. You and I, Berman, have talked about how the DOGE cuts were really nickels and dimes. While the tariff numbers are significant in percentage terms, they're not putting a dent in the deficit. All the other good news is great, and I love it. Look, the inflation looks like it's trending in the right direction. It's still above 2% where it's supposed to be. Sticky was the word you used. I think that's the right word to use. You don't want 2.7% interest for 10 years. You want 2% or lower. So all the other numbers are important, but the one that should keep people up at night is the fact the deficit gets bigger and bigger, not smaller.
And that's why I bring it up. Joe, I'm going to get you in a second. But Mick, I heard Republicans talk about fiscal restraint and slashing and DOGE and all that. See ya. I just showed you the numbers.
Yeah, keep in mind, we're still operating the government off of a continuing resolution. I know that's sort of inside baseball, but the spending that we're operating under, the spending levels, were the spending levels from the last year of the Biden administration. They haven't cut spending. They might have they'll try and freeze it a little bit, and that's better than nothing. But look, the deficits are getting bigger. All this new money is coming in, and still the deficits get bigger. That should be the top line story.
Joe, what stood out to you there?
Well, it reminded me of what I think President Harry Truman said. He wanted a one-handed economist because he got tired of people saying, well, on one hand, there's this, and on the other hand, there's that. You know, you can pick out whatever you want, and I agree with my South Carolina colleague on a lot of what he had to say. One of the things that stood out to me were, the layoffs. They were up 29% in a month and over 140% since July of 2024. There's some good pieces in there, but the deficit is definitely one. And look, I imagine Powell will hold interest rates for the time being, as he should, for good reason, because there's a lot of uncertainty. And we saw that in the report as well, how the uncertainty is up 8%.
Joe, I also saw a lot of doom and gloom from a whole lot of folks, especially from your party and on the left, who told me on April 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, et cetera, that everything was going south and we're in a whole lot of trouble. And I just showed the ding, 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 and an S&P 500 at an all-time high and a NASDAQ at an all-time high as well. I know that's only one portion of what may matter to some folks, but I wonder if you hand it to the president in a sense.
No, I think you have to be rooting for him. You have to be rooting for America. I've never been one to root against him. And, the economy is very complicated. And, there were a lot of these people who said that these tariffs would undermine everything. I do think we are in kind of a wait and see approach, though. I run a small business here in Charleston, South Carolina. A lot of people running small businesses are kind of waiting and seeing and how they're going to, they're peeking around the corner. They're looking around to the next month, to the next quarter. And a lot of these things that the president is putting in place, we will just have to wait and see. And I hope it works out well for our country and for our economy. But for now, I think people are taking this approach of sit back. Let's not make any big decisions yet.
Mick, let me leave it with you here. You know Trump as well as anyone. Where do you think he goes from here, given all those sort of ingredients that I just threw out there?
Yeah, the one thing we haven't talked about is the pressure on Powell. That's what this is going to come back to. There was actually a tweet he put out today about Steve Mnuchin blaming him for Jay Powell. That's how deep his antipathy right now towards Jay Powell goes. He's dragging up this stuff from 7 and 8 years ago. So no, he wants Powell to cut rates. I think that's where his attention will go. And by the way, it's hard to make the argument, at least on an objective standpoint. If inflation is sort of trending in the right direction and the job market is sort of soft, that's a combination that should lead to a cut in interest rates.
All right. I'll leave it there. Mick in Charlotte, the former congressman, somewhere just a little down south. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me, Blake.
Of course. Mick, see ya. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. What is Vladimir Putin's mindset right now? Does anyone know outside of him? Other side of the break, former KGB agent joins us live. I'm going to ask him what he thinks is happening right now, plus this.
There is no borough that will be free from Trump's cruelty.
How about that? Zoran Mamdani with the new game plan, what he's outlining, and Gavin Newsom as well, speaking to The Hill, what he's saying tonight in an exclusive interview as it relates to Donald Trump.
The goal of this meeting for the president is to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end this war. And I think the president of the United States getting in the room with the president of Russia, sitting face to face rather than speaking over the telephone, will give this president the best indication of how to end this war and where this is headed.
6:30 here in Washington tonight, just days away from the Donald Trump-Vladimir Putin summit set to take place in Alaska, a meeting aimed at discussing a possible end to the war in Ukraine. This will be Putin's first visit to this country in a decade. Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, will not attend, and Trump has indicated there could be talks on possible land swaps. It comes as Russian troops breach Ukraine's front lines, a development that could give Putin potential leverage heading into the summit. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, stressing the importance, as he put it, of a face-to-face meeting between Trump and Putin.
The president feels like, look, I got to look at this guy across the table. I need to see him face to face. I need to hear him one-on-one. I need to make an assessment by looking at him. And people have to understand, for President Trump, a meeting is not a concession.
Our Robert Sherman live tonight with the very latest inside Ukraine once again. Robert?
Hey there, Blake. Well, on Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be on the outside looking in. But the same can be said for European leaders, something that they have expressed concern about, especially if there's going to be this conversation of territorial swaps for the Ukrainians. But a phone call is going to be taking place tomorrow between the Americans, the Europeans, the Ukrainians, to get everyone on the same page. Take a listen.
There is a principled stance from European leaders, a clear statement by the European Union, 26 countries, all with us, in diplomatic work and in principled positions. We are in contact with everyone, presenting our arguments to all. Tomorrow, we will continue our work with the United States and with the Europeans.
So we spent the morning over at the Ukrainian presidential palace with President Zelensky, and he gave us some insight on what he thinks Russia is going to bring to the table. And he believes the deal that Russia will put on the table is a ceasefire in exchange for a total Ukrainian withdrawal from the Donbass region. If that is what Russia offers, it will be rejected by the Ukrainians because they believe that will set Russia up for a third iteration of this war sometime after Trump leaves office, giving them the opportunity to, as President Zelensky said, launch a springboard invasion into Ukraine. In terms of Friday, what we can expect here, President Zelensky says he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin is going to get what he wants, a photo with President Trump, which will tell the world that the days of Russia's isolation are over. Blake?
Robert Sherman live in Ukraine tonight, speaking with Zelensky earlier today with us here on The Hill. Robert, thank you for more on what to expect from this summit. Later this week, we are joined once again by Jack Barsky, former undercover KGB agent at one point in time. He's also the author of the book Deep Undercover, My Secret Life and Tangled Allegiances as a KGB Spy in America. Jack, it is always nice to see you and hear from you and your perspective. Thanks for being back with us here on The Hill. Here's where I want to start. I found those comments by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, fascinating today because he said the president, meaning Donald Trump, feels like, look, I've got to look at this guy across the table. I need to see him face to face. I need to hear him one-on-one. I need to make an assessment by looking at him. Does that sound right to you?
Let me just first start with a disclaimer. Whatever I'm going to tell you is based on my only personal opinion. I don't have any information that you guys may have, but it's based on long-term observation and some knowledge as to what Russia is all about and the Russian and as well as the Ukrainian DNA. Yes. And I tell you what Marco Rubio said, the Secretary Rubio, to me is meaningless. What we have here is three political narcissists who are working on their own legacy. We got Vladimir Putin, who wants to reestablish the greater Russia. Zelensky is the savior of the Ukrainian nation. And Donald Trump is the peacemaker. Now, and all three need to come to some kind of an agreement. Just because our president is talking with Vladimir Putin, that gets you nowhere. And where's Europe in that mix? So I am not very optimistic that this is going to go in the right direction.
So you heard Robert Sherman there, Jack, from inside Ukraine, speaking about the possibility, at least from the Ukrainian perspective, that maybe Putin gets what he wants, which is a photo op. Do you think there's something to that?
Well, so what? Yeah, I think there's something to that because, we're talking about narcissism. I mean, he wears it on his sleeve. I mean, he's the greatest, right after, the number of czars that ruled Russia, and there's so much evidence that this ego is out of this world. And but what does it do for the situation in Ukraine? In my view, nothing. And what I'm really worried about, and I think Donald Trump is there as well, that somehow if that war doesn't stop, there will be an accidental nuclear release, and we got a nuclear disaster on our hands.
You believe that's a possibility?
You know how well the Russian nuclear arsenal is maintained? You know how good, and I'm being sarcastic, how good Russian engineering is? It is always been pathetically bad. And I have no confidence in that Russia, the Russian military, can maintain this arsenal so it doesn't all of a sudden explode one day.
Here's what George W. Bush, president at the time, back in 2001, said about Putin, and then I want to pick it up on the other side.
I looked the man in the eye. I found it to be very straightforward and trustworthy. We had a very good dialogue. I was able to get a sense of his soul. He's a man deeply committed to his country and the best interests of his country.
He said, I was able to get a sense of his soul. And the reason why I play that is because obviously Donald Trump has met with Vladimir Putin before. It was back in the first term. And I wonder, Jack, if you feel that having experience face-to-face with Putin like that is has meaning, gives you needed experience to deal with Vladimir Putin, or if it's irrelevant?
I am just still flabbergasted that President Bush saw the soul of Vladimir Putin. I'm sorry. I believe that international diplomacy benefits from leaders meeting face to face, but the bottom line is that both the Ukrainians as well as Russians, the people support the war, still support the war. Now, what Donald Trump can do from our perspective does not change that situation. Reviews the polls in both countries still say that it is amazing that both nations support the continuation of the war, and the Ukrainians are adamantly opposed to any kind of a swap. So what can the face-to-face and a couple of smiles and a photo op do to change that?
Well, okay. All right. Jack Barsky, the author of Deep Undercover. It is, as I mentioned, always a pleasure to hear from you, and thanks for being with us tonight. Hope to check back in later in the week if we can. Jack, thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill, the governor of California not holding back.
California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas. California will continue to punch above its weight.
Gavin Newsom ramping up his fight against President Trump. His exclusive comments to The Hill. Full panel, other side of the break. Nation seems to be an initiative taking form within the Democratic Party to try to make the president public enemy number one. Comes as the California governor, Gavin Newsom, tells The Hill exclusively that he has no regrets on his fighting fire with fire strategy and trying to take on the president when it comes to his own redistricting plans in California. He posted a message trolling the president.
It's time to, dare I say, do the right thing. Actually see how that feels for you, doing the right thing. If you don't, California will neutralize anything you do in the state of Texas.
The White House asked about the ongoing tiff between the president and the governor, even extending to potential lawsuits threatened by Newsom, to which Caroline Leavitt had this response.
Bring it on, Gavin.
And while the governor of California is seeming to pick a fight with the president of the United States, so too is one of the big name Democrats right now, the Democratic Socialist, the candidate there in New York City, Zohran Mamdani. He has launched what he is calling the 5 Boroughs Against Trump tour this week. He's calling out the Trump agenda and why it presents, as he views it, dire consequences for New Yorkers. This Mamdani just from the other day.
There is no borough that will be free from Trump's cruelty. We will feel the pain of this legislation, whether we are in Manhattan, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, or Staten Island.
So will this strategy of taking on the president work on the West Coast, the East Coast, anywhere in between, or maybe not at all? Full panel here with me now. Linda Tran, former senior advisor to the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill. Mick Mulvaney, former chief of staff in the first Trump White House. And Denise Skitsum, NewsNation political contributor. Hello to you all. Happy Tuesday. I guess it's kind of my Monday. Thanks for being with me tonight here on the Hill. Let me start with you, Linda, because it seems like Gavin Newsom, and I'll get to you, Denise, because I know this is your home state. But it seems like Gavin Newsom is just totally locked in on this fight fire with fire strategy. And is that the right way to go about it?
Well, I think Governor Newsom is definitely speaking to the base when he's shouting these missives and throwing out lots of strong arguments against the Trump administration. But let us take a little bit of a walk down memory lane, which is earlier on this year, after the fires occurred in California, he did take a different approach. He tried to be a little bit more moderated and see what working with this administration would look like. And clearly that ended up in not such a great place. He had the National Guard sending 2,000 troops to Los Angeles. So here he is speaking to his base and responding to Trump with the same kind of fire that he's received himself.
Denise, you're out there on the West Coast.
California.
California. What's the reception there?
It's Friday every day, by the way. I just want to rub that in a little bit. But listen, this is really smart on Governor Newsom's part, right? He doesn't really have a record to stand on. California is a complete mess. I can tell you that as a Californian. And with only 27% of independents, which is really all that matters at the end of the day in determining who ends up in the Oval Office, even approving of Democrats is really a record low. One thing this does not solve the problem of is that Democrats still do not have a clear united message or a clear united leader, which obviously Gavin is trying to step up and fill. It doesn't change the fact that there's no messaging, no identity, and no policy platform that Democrats agree on that's going to help them counter what Republicans have to offer.
So, Lindsay, here's what Newsom has been doing, and show the post. He's trying to mimic Trump, essentially. This was the tweet. You can see it's from the press office. It's in all caps. Thank you for your attention to this matter, so on and so forth. He's trolling, but Denise is saying it's because he doesn't have an agenda to run on, essentially.
No, I think like the praise finally that somebody actually is fighting fire with fire is important. I hate that this redistricting issue is the conversation, because when we rely on the census and understand what the actual purpose is to represent like underrepresented communities, mostly ending up being communities of color, like in Texas. So it annoys me that this is a political back and forth. But to see Democratic lawmakers actually take a stance and leave the city, which is something that's more, to me, in a Republican playbook, and watch them stand firm and then Gavin Newsom jump in like a backup plan in case they do go back and Republicans try this in Texas all over again. It's something, rather than everybody sitting back and calling Trump a fascist and all these other terms and doing nothing and just complaining. So, I think they can't just sit back and get rolled over.
So how does Trump process all this, Mick?
Oh, I think he sees it for what it is. It's performance theater. Look, there's a lot of people out there trying to be the next Donald Trump. There's a lot of Democrats trying to be the next Donald Trump. There's a lot of Republicans trying to be the next Donald Trump. I'm just looking forward to my Democrat friends when Gavin Newsom comes out and says, we're going to annihilate you, or there's other inflammatory sort of language, that they'll decry that the same way they do when Republicans use it. They'll call that a threat to democracy. When the folks in Texas leave, that's a threat to democracy. I keep waiting for the balance to that conversation. But it's performance theater. The Democrats are looking for something to catch fire. They're trying to figure out how to separate themselves from the rest of their crowd and also rise to the national level.
So, Linda, to Mick's point, other coast, Zoran Mamdani, my administration will be Donald Trump's worst nightmare, end quote. Performance theater, or is that where this goes? I don't know, assuming he wins. We'll see.
Well, rounding the bend into my third decade in politics, I will say pretty much all of politics in America is performance theater to some extent. But look, I will say this. Zoran Mamdani is doing something a little bit different than what Governor Newsom is doing, in that as part of this whole tour that he has started this week, he's also talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and the impact of Medicaid cuts and the impact of nutrition assistance and that being slashed, as well as housing cuts that have come out of the Republican budget in recent weeks. He's making this substantive in addition to levying those, fighting words.
Well, I also want to talk about why Trump won, right? The economy wasn't good. The economy still isn't good. So when you think about what all the senators are doing in their home states right now, going back and rallying, it's the same thing that Mamdani's doing, is jumping on board to a moment that's at hand to say, okay, well, how did this big, beautiful bill affect your life? How will it? And trying to just go in that direction, knowing that the competitors are both friends with Trump at this point for Mamdani.
So here was Mamdani the other day.
It is time for us to make clear that what this city deserves is a mayor who, when he sees Donald Trump attacking the people of this city, will stand up and fight back against that vision.
What's this showdown going to be like? Denise, Mick, I'll give you the last word here.
More Mamdani, please. The more we see Mamdani, the worse it gets for Democrats who keep, saying we don't have socialism in our agenda. Oh my gosh. Put them out there. I love this head-to-head. We will go 10 rounds every single day on the merits of really capitalism versus socialism. Let's freaking go. I'm so excited when I see Mamdani pop up. And I know every Democrat, whether they admit it publicly or not, is saying, please, God, no more. Please, Mick, just shut them down.
Mick, I'll give you the last word, though. What about to the point that now they're going to hold some of the president's record up and say, all right, this is what I'm fighting up against?
I mean, if you're running in a Democrat primary, isn't this the smart thing to do? I mean, if Democrat primary voters probably don't like Donald Trump very much. So they're probably going to want to vote for whoever hates Donald Trump the most. And that's going to be what differentiates them. Just like in a Republican primary, they're going to be falling over each other to see who can like Donald Trump the most. So you're going to see this theater at every single level. It's just, in a mayor's race in New York, it's going to be fascinating to watch.
From California to Charlotte to our nation's capital, a little bit of a different feel tonight. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
See ya. Talk soon. All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill. That man right there is in the news a lot. My take on the other side of the break on something he said involving our kids and college. And I'll even weave in a little Chipotle. I'll make it all make sense on the other side. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she's following the hot blob that's headed straight for New York City. It's over 250 miles wide. No one knows what it is. That's next, 7 o'clock Eastern. 7 minutes away, my take, other side of the break. I catch up on your day. Here's some of the top stories that are trending right now on thehill.com. First one right here, written by our guy, Chris Steyerwalt. Trump to Washington, dropped dead. The spat between President Trump and the city here that he paints as full of crime is showing no signs of slowing down. That is one of the big stories here in Washington tonight. How about this? Also trending, White House launches review of Smithsonian museums. According to officials, that review will ensure the national museums align with President Trump's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, among other initiatives. That coming out of the White House today. And then finally, how about this? Dana White, UFC planning cage fight at the White House. You read that right. Shortly after the UFC closed that $7 billion deal with Paramount to stream his league's fights, he talked about the prospects of a fight at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It appears as if that is going to happen next year. To check out these stories and more, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen or head on over to thehill.com. All right, time for my take now. On this day, 1981, IBM unveiled its first personal computer. That thing right there. Now, IBM didn't expect sales to be as simple as ABC 123. It only projected less than 250,000 to be sold in the first 5 years. They ended up blowing that out, though, selling 3 million. Now, we have seen a lot of the, you can call them newer age Goliath tech companies in the news recently. The deal President Trump struck with NVIDIA, for example, involving its chips. Apple's Tim Cook in the Oval Office last week as well, with a pledge to build out data centers. Even an offer today from a growing AI startup, Perplexity, trying to buy Google Chrome for $34 billion. But how about these headlines to consider for a moment? As fears grow about AI, Sam Altman says college graduates from Gen Z are the luckiest kids in history. Some might disagree, though, as this New York Times headline from over the weekend read, goodbye $165,000 tech jobs. Student coders seek work at Chipotle. Now, in this town, we've seen a steady stream of the top CEOs pouring into the West Wing, trying to position themselves at the top of the AI food chain. And while no one knows what the future holds, I'll leave you tonight by suggesting if you think back to where tech was in 1981 on this day for a moment, Altman is probably right. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. We'll be back tomorrow. I hope you have a great night.